The awakening terror. The ancient halls of the Galactic Council had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations over 3 million years. Today, they would witness something unprecedented. Supreme Overseer Corfax floated into the Grand Chamber, his translucent tentacles pulsing with the bioluminescent patterns that marked his species, the Zilanians, as the dominant force in known space. For 5,000 years, his empire had ruled unchallenged across 12 spiral arms of the galaxy. The emergency session had been called after a routine expansion probe discovered something unusual in the Outer Rim territories. Corfax settled into his crystalline throne, watching as representatives from the subject races took their assigned positions below him. The Morvax, with their armored carapaces, the ethereal whispers who existed partially in subspace, and dozens of other species who had learned their place in the cosmic hierarchy. Scout Commander Yilk stepped forward, his forearms trembling as he presented his report. The holographic display materialized above the council floor, showing a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. The readings indicated primitive radio emissions, basic nuclear technology, and crude chemical rockets that had barely managed to establish colonies on neighboring worlds. The species called themselves humans, bipedal mammals with surprisingly short lifespans and fragile bodies that required constant temperature regulation. Corfax examined the data with practiced indifference. Another primitive race to be cataloged and conquered. Their military assets appeared laughable by galactic standards. Simple projectile weapons, nuclear warheads that the Empire's basic shields could deflect without effort, and spacecraft that still relied on reaction mass for propulsion. The Scouts report noted one curious detail, though. Despite their technological limitations, these humans had survived on a world with extreme weather patterns, aggressive fauna, and constant tectonic instability. They had earned their survival through adaptability rather than natural advantages. The Council voted unanimously for immediate annexation. Standard protocol dictated sending a Class 3 subjugation fleet, more than sufficient to pacify a preftal civilization. Corfax assigned the task to Battle Commander Thranix, a veteran of 40 successful conquests. The fleet consisted of 200 vessels, including 50 dreadnoughts that had never known defeat. Each ship carried weapons that could crack continents and shields that had withstood supernovas. 3 cycles later, the subjugation fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of human space, then expected the usual pattern of panic, futile resistance, and swift capitulation. Instead, he found something peculiar. The human colonies showed no signs of evacuation, no desperate diplomatic messages begging for mercy, just a single transmission from their largest colony, Sigma 7, stating simply that any aggressive action would be met with appropriate response. Then found the warning amusing. He ordered his fleet to advance, weapons charging to deliver the traditional demonstration of power that would break the primitive species' will to fight. The first plasma barrage targeted Sigma 7's orbital defense platforms, crude constructions of steel and ceramic armor that should have vaporized instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The platforms didn't just survive. They seemed to absorb the energy, their hull plating glowing briefly before returning to normal. Before Thinex could process this anomaly, space itself seemed to tear apart. A massive vessel emerged from what the humans apparently called a fold in space-time. The ship defied every principle of naval architecture the Empire understood. It was impossibly large, nearly 5 kilometers in length, with a hull that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Strange symbols marked its surface, and the name painted on its bow read, U.S. Leviathan. The Leviathan moved without any visible propulsion system, simply sliding through space as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions, then ordered immediate concentrated fire from all 50 dreadnoughts. Enough firepower to shatter moons converged on the human vessel. The beams struck home, and for a moment, Threnix believed victory was assured. Then the smoke cleared, and the Leviathan remained untouched, its hull now pulsing with an ominous red glow. A transmission cut through all frequencies, somehow bypassing the Empire's quantum encryption. The human who appeared on screen looked unremarkable, a middle-aged female with graying hair and tired eyes. She wore a simple uniform with the rank insignia of Admiral. She spoke in perfect Zilinian, despite the language being a closely guarded secret of the Empire. Her name was Admiral Sarah Chen, and her words would echo through history. She explained that humanity had been monitoring galactic communications for decades, learning about the Empire's brutal methods long before making their presence known. They had reverse-engineered technology from crashed probes, combined it with theoretical physics that the Empire had dismissed as impossible, and created weapons specifically designed to counter Zelanian supremacy. The Leviathan was not just a ship, it was a statement of intent. Then responded with typical Imperial arrogance, launching fighters and boarding craft while maintaining bombardment. The Leviathan's response was swift and terrible. Ports opened along its hull, releasing swarms of objects too small to be ships, but too coordinated to be missiles. They moved like living things, dodging point defense fire and attaching to Zelanian vessels. Within seconds, each infected ship began to dissolve, their proud armor converting into more of the strange nanomachine swarms. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted exactly 17 minutes. 50 dreadnoughts, pride of the Zelanian fleet, were reduced to expanding clouds of molecular dust. Threnx's flagship survived only because Admiral Chen deliberately spared it to carry a message back to the Empire. The humans were not interested in conquest or revenge. They simply wanted to be left alone. Any further aggression would result in the complete dissolution of the Zelanian Empire, then return to the capital world in disgrace. His survival seen as cowardice rather than strategic necessity. Corfax received his report with the kind of rage that had once destroyed entire star systems. The loss of 50 dreadnoughts was not just a military defeat. It was an existential threat to the Empire's image of invincibility. If word spread that primitives had destroyed a subjugation fleet, every conquered race might begin to harbor thoughts of rebellion. The Supreme Overseer ordered immediate mobilization of the Grand Armada, 10,000 ships, including planet killers, that had ended civilizations far older than humanity. He would personally lead this force to demonstrate that the Zelanian Empire's power remained absolute. The human colony worlds would burn as an example to any who dared challenge the natural order of the galaxy. As the Grand Armada prepared to launch, deep space monitoring stations began reporting anomalies. Ships were appearing throughout human space, not emerging from hyperspace or fold drives, but simply manifesting as if they had always been there. Each vessel bore the same liquid metal hull as the Leviathan, and preliminary scans suggested there were hundreds of them. The humans, it seemed, had been preparing for this moment far longer than anyone had imagined. When giants fall, the Grand Armada emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 10,000 ships arranged in the sphere of annihilation pattern that had conquered 100 civilizations. Korax stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, a vessel that dwarfed even the human Leviathan. His bioluminescent patterns pulsed with confidence as he surveyed the human fleet arranged before them. Only 300 ships faced his armada, odds that should have guaranteed instant victory. Yet, something felt wrong. The human vessels showed no signs of fear or desperate last-minute preparations. They simply waited, maintaining perfect formation as if 10,000 enemy ships were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Admiral Chen appeared on all frequencies again, this time standing on the bridge of the Leviathan alongside officers from various human colonies. She offered one final chance for peaceful withdrawal, stating that humanity had no desire for unnecessary bloodshed. Korax's response was to fire the Eternal Dominion's primary weapon, a beam of condensed dark matter that had once carved a canyon across an entire planet. The beam struck the Leviathan directly, and for the first time, the human vessel showed a reaction. Its hull rippled and flowed, absorbing the energy and redirecting it into space, where it harmlessly dissipated. Then, the humans revealed their true capability. Each human ship deployed what they called reality anchors, devices that literally locked space-time in place around the battlefield. Suddenly, the Empire's advantages vanished. Hyperspace jumps became impossible. Shields that relied on dimensional phasing failed. Weapons that manipulated exotic matter simply stopped functioning. The battlefield had been reduced to pure physical combat. Where human innovation would face Zelanian tradition, the human ships began to change, their liquid metal hulls reconfiguring into forms optimized for combat. Weapon ports appeared where none had existed before. Fighter bays opened to release craft that seemed to violate conservation of mass, unfolding from impossibly small spaces into deadly attack vessels. The Leviathan itself transformed into something that defied description, a constantly shifting fortress of destruction that adapted to every attack pattern the Empire employed. Admiral Chen's voice echoed across the battlefield as she explained humanity's philosophy of war. On Earth, they had learned that strength alone never guaranteed victory. The dinosaurs had been strong, yet mammals survived. Ancient empires with superior numbers had fallen to smaller, more adaptable forces. Humanity had studied every military defeat in Earth's history and learned one crucial lesson. The ability to adapt was the ultimate weapon. The human fleet demonstrated this principle with devastating efficiency. When the Empire used plasma weapons, human hulls became mirrors that reflected the energy back. When kinetic weapons were employed, the ships became fluid, allowing projectiles to pass harmlessly through. When the Zilanians attempted boarding actions, they found the human ship's interiors were maze-like configurations that constantly rearranged themselves, trapping invaders in endless corridors that led nowhere. The Empire's losses mounted rapidly. Planet killers that had ended civilizations were torn apart by nanomachine swarms. Dreadnoughts that had never known defeat found themselves unable to damage ships that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The battlefield became a graveyard of Zilanian pride, with burning wrecks drifting through space. As testament to humanity's terrible ingenuity, Corfax watched his Grand Armada crumble with growing horror. These humans had not just developed counters to Zilanian technology. They had fundamentally reimagined the nature of warfare itself. Their ships carried weapons that attacked on conceptual levels, eroding the very idea of victory from Zilanian minds. Officers began to question their orders, doubt spreading through the fleet like a virus. The turning point came when the Leviathan deployed what Admiral Chen called the Mirror Protocol. Every remaining Zilanian ship suddenly found itself facing an exact duplicate of itself, created from the same adaptive material as the human vessels, but programmed with perfect knowledge of each ship's weaknesses. The Empire's forces were literally fighting better versions of themselves and losing badly. In desperation, Corax authorized the use of the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Void Cannon. This device created temporary black holes, weapons so dangerous that they had been banned by the Galactic Council for fear of destabilizing entire star systems. The Eternal Dominion's cannon charged, preparing to eliminate not just the human fleet, but the entire solar system if necessary. The humans' response shocked everyone. Instead of trying to stop the weapon, they accelerated its formation. Human ships surrounded the Nent black hole, somehow feeding it energy, while simultaneously containing its growth. Within minutes, they had turned the Empire's doomsday weapon into a power source. Using its immense gravitational energy to fuel an even more terrible device, space itself began to sing. The human fleet had weaponized gravity waves, creating oscillations that shook apart Zilanian ships at the molecular level. The proud vessels of the Empire simply ceased to exist. Their atoms scattered across light years of space. The Eternal Dominion shields held, but barely. And Corfax knew that was only because the humans were allowing it. Admiral Chen appeared on his personal communication channel, her expression showing neither triumph nor cruelty, only tired determination. She explained that humanity had learned about the Empire's brutality, how they had enslaved or exterminated thousands of species over millennia. The humans had spent 50 years preparing for this moment, developing weapons not to conquer, but to end the age of galactic tyranny. Corfax attempted to negotiate, offering territorial concessions, trade agreements, even partial autonomy for humanity within the Empire's structure. Chen's response was simple. The Zilanian Empire would dissolve immediately. All conquered species would be freed. The technology that had maintained their dominance would be shared among all civilizations equally. Any attempt to maintain imperial control would result in the complete elimination of the Zilanian species. The Supreme Overseer had no choice. With 90% of his Grand Armada destroyed, and the remainder helpless against human technology, surrender was the only option. The formal capitulation was broadcast across the galaxy, showing Corfax bowing before Admiral Chen and acknowledging humanity as the new arbiters of galactic peace. The Age of Empires had ended in a single battle. The aftermath reshaped galactic civilization entirely. Humanity established what they called the Commonwealth Protocol, a system where all species had equal voice regardless of technological advancement or military might. The human fleet, rather than conquering, became peacekeepers, their adaptive ships patrolling space to prevent any return to imperial dominance. The Leviathan remained in orbit around Earth, a silent guardian and reminder of humanity's power. Its true capabilities remained unknown, as the battle had only required a fraction of its potential. Some species whispered that the ship was not built but grown, that it was somehow alive and learning. Others believed it was connected to every human through quantum entanglement, a collective weapon of the entire species. Korak spent his remaining years studying human history, trying to understand how a species from a backwater planet had developed such devastating power. He found his answer in their literature, in stories of underdogs overcoming impossible odds, of innovation born from desperation, of unity forged in adversity. The humans had not become powerful despite their harsh world, but because of it. The galaxy learned to respect humanity, not through fear, but through understanding. The humans shared their technology freely, helped rebuild worlds devastated by imperial rule, and established universities where all species could learn together. They taught that true strength came not from domination, but from cooperation, not from uniformity, but from diversity. Years later, when new threats emerged from beyond the galaxy, it was humanity's adaptive technology and collaborative philosophy that united all species in defense. The Leviathan led combined fleets, where former enemies fought side by side, their differences becoming strengths rather than weaknesses. The galaxy had learned humanity's greatest lesson, that survival belonged not to the strongest, but to those who could change. Admiral Chen retired to a small colony world, spending her final years teaching young officers from all species. Her last recorded words, carved into the memorial that stood where the final battle had taken place, summarized humanity's contribution to galactic civilization. We did not come to rule. We came to ensure that none would rule over others again. In this we found our purpose among the stars.